Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Severance, Season 1, Episode 1. Good news about Hell is the first episode of not only this show, where I'm going to be breaking down and recapping every single episode of the Apple TV Plus exclusive show Severance, but I will be spoiling that. It's also the first show of this show where I'm doing those things. So welcome to the show. It's probably going to be a long episode if I had to predict. Obviously, if you're watching or listening to this, you know what the runtime is already. You know before I do, as I record it. But these are long episodes, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a very mysterious show, very interesting show. This is by far the most complex show that I've ever attempted to do an episode recap of, so please bear with me. This is a show created by Dan Erickson. A lot of the episodes are directed by Ben Stiller. This first episode, I should say, was directed by Ben Stiller. And the visual stylings of the show are amazing. Absolutely gorgeous. And very just simple, practical use of a camera to really illustrate a lot of things. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of layers to this show, and without further ado, let's get into breaking down. So if you haven't watched Severance, I wouldn't necessarily recommend listening to this first. Maybe go check out the first episode of Severance before listening to this, because I will be breaking it down beat by beat, going through the entire episode. I'm also going to be talking about different themes that have kind of that are kind of brought up throughout the show. As well as some of the mysteries as they're kind of the big questions that are being asked and as they're being answered throughout this show. And then I'm also going to be tracking the different characters because there's some complexity to the characters by virtue of the narrative of the show. With all that said, let's get it started. This show starts off as most humans start off. Very disoriented, very confused. Even the imagery evokes the kind of imagery of birth as we see a woman laid out on a conference table, passed out, top-down view. Very much a visual, if you look at the background here, a visual that almost looks or evokes the ideas of a baby in the womb, as it were. And this voice comes over a speaker box. The first words of the first episode of Severance are asking the question, "Who are you?"
Who are you?
Which is a big theme of this entire show. Who are you? Who are you in different situations? I mean, who are you really? Who are you to different people? Many different kind of ways to take that question. Very first question asked to this person who is just waking up. And this person wakes up and she's given a survey. There's 5 questions she's asked to answer. The first question was already asked. Who are you? She doesn't know. Unknown. Second question. What is your birth state? What state were you born? Unknown. Okay. Third question. Name any state. Delaware. Don't know what Delaware means, but that's so far we've gotten an answer instead of 2 unknowns. Number 3, name a state, Delaware. Number 4, what did Mr. Egan have for breakfast? Very weird question. Who is Mr. Egan? I don't know. And why would his breakfast be such the number 4 question? Obviously unknown. Who would know? Who would know? Number 5, what is/was your mother's eye color? Unknown. Door opens. Adam Scott, the actor Adam Scott, playing the character of Mark, walks in, telling this woman she got a perfect score. So what do we know so far? The only things that this people who wake up on this table should know are a state, maybe specifically Delaware, and that's it. Everything else was unknown. Not supposed to know what Egan had for breakfast. You're not supposed to know anything about your family. Not supposed to know where you're born. You don't even know who you are. Right? The rest of everything's going to be given to you, as far as you know. And then we cut to previously this same guy, Mark, in his car, crying. Don't know why he's crying, but he's crying. He's emotional, wiping his tears. We see him go into this work. It's a giant parking lot full of cars, giant building. He walks in. There's this big, like, carved mural of a portrait. And he goes in, goes to the locker room where he's swapping out, wearing a different watch, wearing different name tags. Right? The tag that has his name on it, it goes into a drawer. He puts on another badge. Even different shoes. So kind of eliminating specific things that may identify himself. Goes into the locker room. Goes up. It's 9:04 a.m. Goes up. There's a cool in-camera effect that they do when they go through the elevator where it changes the focal length and it makes the face kind of expand or contract depending on if they're going up or down. Really kind of a cool effect that they do. And then he's walking through a bunch of different empty hallways, empty rooms. Like it's as if nobody works in this gigantic building that is full of cars outside. We don't know where any of these people are. So he's going through all these hallways, notices that he has a tissue in his pocket, has no idea how that tissue got in his pocket, despite the fact we just saw him crying into it, throws it away. So we know as the audience that he is unaware of anything from outside at this point. Goes to a room, completely empty room, except for 4 desks that are set up in the center of the room. Each of these desks set up with a little partition between any of them. Very interesting kind of aesthetic to this office building. You know, a giant office floor with just 4 desks, only 4 people that work in this room. And even still, they're separated by partitions. We're introduced to a few of the characters. Not only do we see the 4 desks, we see the computers they're working on are very old computers. They're like computers from like the 80s, right? Black and white screens or green and black. I don't know if that was, I'm colorblind, so forgive me if I don't properly remember or recall colors. So these people who are literally reborn into this new reality, assumingly have no idea what technology is like outside of this place, right? We're seeing old computers, like nothing else. Like everything is just all they know in here. Even their names are given to them because when they wake up, they don't know their name, assuming they get a perfect score. Or meet a couple of the coworkers. We meet Irving. We find out that Petey, another coworker, is out. We find Dylan. We meet Dylan, who is for some reason excited about a waffle party. We don't know what the waffle thing is, but it's like a reward or of some kind. He's very excited about. We also see Milchick, who is kind of like the Milchick is the floor manager. He takes Mark to go see Miss Cobel, who is the senior manager. She's in a new office. He tells Mark to compliment her on the new office. They get there. He does so, and she's not very happy with it. And he, kind of just on board with trying to just appease the manager, Miss Cobel. He is sat down. There's a board meeting going on, but it's not a board meeting where you have all the members sitting around a giant conference table like the one we saw at the beginning of this episode. It's a board meeting where they are assumingly communicating with or attached to the meeting via a little speaker box. The same speaker box, same type of speaker box that was sitting on that table, the conference table at the opening scene with the words of "Who are you?" coming out of it. This board meeting plugged in. Board meeting, we need to talk to you, Mark. The board silent throughout. At no point do we hear anything coming from the board through that speaker, but they are communicating with Cobel, I believe, through like an earpiece or whatever. So Mark finds out Petey is gone. He's no longer working for the company. And Mark is now the new deputy chief. He's given his new badge. He's offered to, if requested, offered a handshake. Very corporate. All of this stuff, very corporate. Very, like, very inhuman, very sterile, very, like, sad. Very depressing. And he's got to go do his first duty as department chief is to do the input survey. And Mark is doing this survey with Irving. They're in a small room. There's a binder of kind of questions that he needs to go through, basically. It's a thing that you would get like if you do customer service at like a call center, like a script that you go through, and if somebody responds, you flip to the page, and there's the pre-prescribed response to however the conversation goes. And one of the aspects of this is that the person is only able to leave if they ask to leave 3 times. And Mark makes sure to underline that to make it happen. And when it starts, he messes up. And now we're basically at the opening of this show, but from Mark's perspective within this room. He is the person who started off this episode by asking, "Who are you?" And he messed up when he did that because he didn't do the preamble first. He started with the survey, which the first question is "Who are you?" And when Milchick sees Mark mess up in this instant, he asks Cobel if he should go in and help and fix the situation. She says no, allowing him to do his thing. Of course, there are cameras set up so Milchick and Cobel can monitor what is going on. They're hands off. This is Mark's new responsibility. Mark constantly looking up at the cameras as he's doing these things. Mark's in the room now with her. One of her first questions is if she's livestock, which is an interesting question. Of course, Mark kind of poo-poos that kind of thing. She finally learns her name, which is Helly R. So Mark is now giving Helly her orientation, and it is by the book, literally by the book. She asks what severance is. He kind of avoids that question and goes into more of the sales pitch of what the purpose of severance is, to facilitate a work-life balance, as it were. And Helly, kind of rebellious, clearly not wanting to be there, picks up the speaker box that's on the table and throws it at Mark, trying to go to a door to get out, but the doors are locked. And now a quick word from our sponsor. Now you can wear the many faces. Original art by Ray Taylor. Select pieces from the ongoing series of abstract ink paintings. All products made with high quality materials, made right here in the USA. Go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch to browse the entire collection and save yourself an extra 10% when you check out by using coupon code RTSTMF. So once again, go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF merch and save 10% when you use coupon code RTSTMF. And now, back to our show. Cut to now they're in Cobel's office or, another room. Mark is getting a Band-Aid on him. Cobel is relating to Helly about how much she doesn't like Mark either. She doesn't blame her for weaponizing a piece of office equipment. Actually, no, we're not there yet. She asks to leave. So she throws the speaker at him. Obviously, she's not able to go. He relates to her, saying that, you're going to make good friends. My friend Petey, was somebody that I worked with, and she wants to leave. He tells her that she needs to ask to leave 3 times. So she does so. She's asked twice, and she just needs to ask once more. So then Mark takes her to down these long hallways, almost like a maze in a lot of ways. And there's this, the exit. Mark's not allowed to watch, so he stays around the corner. And there's a situation where Helly just keeps going back and forth through the thing. No matter how hard she tries to leave, every time she walks through that door, she's just walking back into that hallway. She never actually sees the stairway, the exit. And she eventually gives up, and she goes back and doesn't work. So she finds out that she's the replacement. She's a replacement. She doesn't know for who, but she's clearly replacing Mark, who's replacing Petey. Now we are in the place where Mark is getting the Band-Aid, and Cobel is relating to Helly about how much she doesn't like Mark. And then Helly's given a disc. She's like, this is something Mark can't screw up. It's just a video you have to watch. So Cobel gives this disc to Helly. Now, Mark is in the office with Cobel, and Cobel has this great line, one of 2 very interesting things that are said by the same character.
You know, my mother was an atheist. She used to say that there was good news and bad news about hell. The good news is, hell is just the product of a morbid human imagination. The bad news is, whatever humans can imagine, they can usually create.
I don't know what that means.
A very interesting line about, like, clearly this is a hell created by men, by mankind, by people, by a company. And in my opinion, Severance, Lumon in general, or Severance specifically, is this hell that was created because it was imagined. Helly sits down in front of a TV where the disc is put into the DVD player, so that technology exists in the Severance world. She plays the video, and she sees herself sitting down, saying that 2 hours prior to her watching this video, she sat down to record this video for herself, that she knowingly decided to do this procedure, Severance, that is going to bifurcate her memories, to cut her life into 2, part of her life being within the Severance, within this data refinery, and the other half is outside. And this is something that she knowingly did. And there's also the aspect of when she was trying to leave, Mark said, the only reason you show up, the only reason you keep coming back is because the person on the outside, the you that is on the outside, wants to come back. And that the you that exists within Severance has no choice. The real choice is the person on the outside. That is the person that chooses to come back. And then once you're there, you have no choice. The choice is taken away from you. Cut to, Mark is off. It is the end of the day. he gets out, goes back to the locker room, goes down the elevator. They do the camera shift thing. He's in the locker room. He notices that he's got a new badge now, which he didn't realize, but he notices that. Goes out to his car, and on his windshield there's an envelope. Inside the envelope is a gift card to Petey's Bar and Grill, as well as an explanation of why he has a Band-Aid on his head, which we know that he got from the speaker box that Helly threw at him. But in the card, it said that he tripped and fell and hit his head. And because of that, here's a gift card. Congratulations on the gift card. Really very corporate way to spin a negative as a positive. So he's given this gift card. As he leaves, he almost hits Helly. They obviously don't know each other. They're supposed to be staggered when they leave, but I'm sure because of the gift card that held Mark up a bit, so he almost runs into her as he leaves. Then we see Mark pulling up into his housing development where he lives, and we see what kind of life he has when he is outside of work, which is the same as everybody who works a full-time job. They get home, they usually drink some alcohol and watch some TV, and Mark's life is no different. Gets a knock at the door. Somebody's at the door. It's his sister, which we don't know it's his sister right away, but we quickly find out it's his sister. He's got a dinner that he agreed to. His sister is concerned because it's been a year. It's an anniversary of something, and she felt that he might want to be around people. Obviously, we saw him earlier crying. I would imagine that is part of the reason why. He's just overly sad. His sister knows. So now we're at a dinner, which is not a real dinner, which was brought up on the car ride to the dinner, that it is a non-dinner dinner. And we are in the future, some point in the future. Obviously, the technology of Severance doesn't exist today. But it is in the future, and this is apparently the future of dinner parties, where you don't actually eat food. You just get together with people around a dinner table and have conversations, and they're having conversations. One guy is like bringing up like this mundane trivia about how during World War I they called it the Great War. They didn't call it World War I. And Mark brings up the fact that, well, World War II hadn't happened yet, so there's no reason why they would call it World War I. We also know, we find out some things about Mark. We find out that Mark was a former history teacher. We find out that he has been working for Lumon for 2 years and has been severed for a year. We find out that the anniversary is of his former wife. We find out that she was a Russian lit major, or a Russian lit teacher, and she died a year ago. So lines up, wife died, he gets severed. Bada bing, bada boom. So they're having these conversations at this non-dinner dinner. And after the dinner, his sister is making him a sandwich. Or there's like part of the conversation as the whole dinner part of the evening is going, that nobody really has, or rarely has, food-based dinners anymore. So in this future, nutrition is supplied in another way. And dinners, that's why these dinners kind of exist in the forms that they do. But Mark is more of a traditional guy. His sister decides to make him a post-quote-unquote dinner sandwich, so he actually has something to eat. He also takes a sip of alcohol out of a flask. She invites him, requests that he stay there, just stay the night there. So we cut to later on, while they're kind of getting him ready in a bed, that he's in a room that has multiple beds, and his sister is pregnant and expecting. Her husband is Rickon, I believe his name is. Yeah, Rickon is her husband, and he says that it's traumatic when kids grow up, that they constantly are having their beds taken away from them and new beds, and it's like traumatic or whatever. So it's better, they say it's better for the kid to grow up with all of their beds that they will use throughout their lifetime, so that they are always growing up around them and they will never be like that trauma of the loss of. So we're at a point in the future where mental health is so focused on in a way that is almost ridiculous. It's almost ridiculous. Later on in the night, Mark wakes up to get a little late night drink. While looking out the window, he sees a man standing outside, looking at him, seemingly recognizing Mark. And as a light goes by, he disappears. The next morning, Mark tells his sister about it. They kind of joke back and forth about it. Apparently, there's a bar down the street. She kind of passes it off as it's just one of the people stumbling home from the bar. But Mark's not too convinced because, the guy seemingly recognized Mark. Cut to Mark is back at home doing some chores around the house, cleaning out the gutters, taking out the trash, and then is later at the bar, Pips, making use of that gift card he was given. Gets a call from his neighbor who he's talked to before, Mrs. Selvig, who's his neighbor, who is a bit confused with how the trash pickup, recycling pickup works in their community. And he is at Pips once again, describing that to her, trying to get her on the right track with that. While he's on the phone, a man sits down across the table from him. It is Petey, which, as the audience, we know Petey is the guy that formerly worked at Severance, and it is quickly told to Mark that it is that same Petey, and that he was somehow able to bypass the Severance thing, which was supposed to be permanent. But he was able to bypass it, tells Mark that they were work friends. Mark has no idea who this guy was. We find out that Petey was Mark's best friend, but Mark was Petey's just very good friend. So there was that dynamic that was very interesting for Petey to specify. Petey is on the run from a guy named Grainer, which we haven't met yet in the show, but assuming Grainer works for Lumon, and because Petey bypassed the Severance thing and is no longer probably the reason why he's no longer working there, but Grainer is out to get him, obviously to silence him, because we can't have that happening. And then as he's given Mark a card, as Mark leaves Pips later on, he opens the card up, and in the card is a letter from Pete telling him that if he wants to know more, if he wants to have these questions answered, go to this address and you can find out. So there is a potential for Mark to become educated outside of Severance as far as what's going on, because we don't really know what's going on at Severance. During the dinner party, we found out a few things of what Severance is. We found out that Severance, according to the people at this dinner party, so who knows how accurate their information is. Severance started in the 1800s with topical salves, is also involved in medicine, but is more on the tech side now, which I would assume the tech aspect of Lumon is specific to the Severance and whatever implant they do to bifurcate somebody's existence and memories. So that is kind of all we know. But obviously, this brings up more questions for Mark. This brings up more questions of what's going on. And if he goes to that address, he will be given potentially more answers, or at least be led down a path of more answers.
Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today.
So Mark goes home, and as he's walking in to his house, his neighbor Selvig is outside, who we don't see, but we hear her voice, and she's as Mark's going into his house to go to sleep.
You know, my mother was a Catholic. She used to say it takes the saints 8 hours to bless a sleeping child. I hope you aren't rushing the saints.
Well, I'll give them ample time tonight. Good night, Mrs. Selvig.
So she wants Mark to go to sleep, and right after that, if the voice didn't cue you up, we find out the very last shot of this episode. We find out that his neighbor, Mrs. Selvig, is also Mrs. Cobel, which is interesting because the quote that she gave Mark in the beginning was her mom is an atheist, and the quote that she gives outside is that her mom is a Catholic, and she's going by two names. So we don't know necessarily if Selvig even is aware that she probably, if I had to guess after watching that's the end of the first episode, but if I had to guess, and I don't think we find out in this, I have seen the full first episode, but I'm not going to spoil anything. It is a mystery. We don't know. We don't know the dynamic of that. But if I had to guess, based on just this small information, because when you are severed and you're born again, quote unquote, into the set and you're given your orientation, they tell you who your name is. And the fact that she's going by two separate names really only serves if she's unaware of her role inside and outside. Both seemingly are involving some sort of like managerial. I mean, clearly she's a manager inside, but on the outside, she's his neighbor and concerned with his sleep schedule. Maybe like more of a life coach-esque on the outside. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we find out that she is unaware of both sides, or maybe not. Maybe she's completely aware and she's not severed and she just goes by different names inside and outside. So that is the first episode. What do we know so far? We know on the inside of Severance, we know his coworkers, right? Mark, obviously, main character, same name inside and outside. Mark is the new department head within the data refinement department. He is very good friends with Petey, who is no longer there. So his best friend, his best work friend, is no longer there. We have Helly, who is a new hire, who clearly doesn't want to be there. She wants to leave. We have Dylan, who loves the waffle party for some reason, super stoked about trying to get the waffle party. Irving is another guy, don't really know anything about him yet. And then Petey, who is a former coworker, is no longer on the inside. but he is the former department head, and he is Mark's best friend. The management within inside Severance, we have the board, who is silent through the speaker box. We have Cobel, who is the senior manager, has an atheist mom, according to her. Milchick is the floor manager, and then there's a guy named Mr. Grainer who is out to get Petey. On the outside, we know that Mark had lost his wife. He used to be a teacher before working for Lumon. He's worked at Lumon for 2 years, severed for a year, which coincides with his wife passing away. We have on the outside, we have Petey, who is his former coworker, who is now unsevered, who is watching out and scared of this guy named Grainer, and he gives Mark the information, has more information potentially. You have Mark's neighbor, Selvig, who has a Catholic mom and seems to be sweet, like the type of person that character is inside of work and outside of work is different. She seems to be like it's just a sweet older neighbor, versus inside she is a horrible person that doesn't seem to like Mark at all. And then we have Devin, his sister, who's married to Rickon, who's very like a hippy-dippy type of a couple. She's pregnant. They have multiple beds. Lives near a bar. Some of the big themes of this show so far. I mean, this episode starts off with the question, "Who are you?" which is very, from a philosophical level, very big. I mean, questions brought up by Helly, "Who am I?" And how much choice do you have? Which is a huge difference with your inside versus outside. Who, like, are you a monster? Which Petey brought up with the conversation with Mark inside of the Pips Bar and Grill. Like, you are a monster for allowing yourself to put yourself into that kind of a reality, being severed. Your outside life, outside of Severance, is your time is very limited. That is the only time you really get to sleep, and is clearly, for Selvig, a very important aspect of your outside life is to make sure you're well rested, so when you go to work, you can perform your tasks very well. And outside life is where the pain exists. Clearly, Mark is still in pain from his wife's passing. Most likely the reason why he's crying before work. After the dinner party, had the conversation with his sister. He's no longer going to therapy. And he's choosing to hide from the pain by going inside, being severed, rather than healing from the pain. And the kind of being inside, being severed, is kind of the ignorance is bliss. Like, when you are outside, you're not having to think of how you're wasting your life inside. Although it's clear how little of your life you have when you are outside of the Severance. And there's like a religious themes in some ways. Obviously, the two quotes from Cobel / Selvig, work, Severance / the Severance specifically, is seemingly the man created hell, product of the human imagination brought to life. Outside should be the real world, should be heaven, but it is squandered. And the whole 8 hours of sleep blessed by saints kind of a thing. So the religious aspects of this are kind of interesting. But there are big questions going on. Obviously, what is Lumon? During the dinner conversation, there was a lot of themes brought up. Obviously, the 1800s, it was started in theory with topical salves, got into medicine. And, I mean, medicine is a type of technology, internal technology. And it is not surprising, just as in our reality today, with neural implants being something that we are very close to doing, something that somebody like Elon Musk is very excited about doing. We're clearly seeing what the downfalls are. Obviously, in addition to that, there are, which was brought up during the dinner conversation, that there is some congressional issues with Severance. So Lumon is under pressure, under scrutiny from the American government in regards to Severance and its capabilities, which, if you're able to do this to humans, clearly is something that should be frightening. And the applications of that are frightening as well. To control a person, especially if you think of what the United States government does, which is military, invading other countries. If you want to, in theory, keep people from experience PTSD from warfare, if you want to keep national secrets, as it were, this severance technology would really help facilitate that sort of thing. So we do know that Lumon is under some scrutiny from Congress. Big questions in addition to what is Lumon. Obviously, how did Petey get severed? Why did he get severed? Which he could be a big key to answering a lot of the questions of what Lumon is, what Lumon's trying to do with the severance program. Obviously, what is at the address that was given to Mark from Petey? That is a big question. The whole thing with Cobel and Selvig, do they know? Are they aware of each other? What purpose does it serve? Obviously a big question. What happened to Mark's wife? We know that she died a year ago. Clearly he is... instead of dealing with that pain, deciding to run away from that pain and hide from that pain by getting the severed procedure done. Which seemingly, I mean, we saw in this episode when he got into work, went up the elevator, the camera effect thing, and he's just chipper and has no idea. Everybody knows he was crying because they asking if he looks sick and all this stuff. But so he's clearly emotionally detached from whatever it is outside, and that is why he decided to get the sever. So we kind of know why Mark decided to get severed, to run away from the pain of the loss of his wife, rather than go through therapy and deal with it and kind of live to repair those things. So we don't know what happened to Mark's wife. We don't know much about Helly. We don't know why she chose to go in. Her outside persona is completely okay with what's going on there, despite the fact that her inside self is trying to reject it on every level. So the whole Helly situation is a big question mark. And then also, I mean, probably the biggest question on everybody's mind is why Dylan is so interested in getting this waffle party. Why is that such a desired perk for his job? So those are kind of the big questions so far. Only gotten a few answers, like finding out why Mark is there, despite not knowing what happened to his wife. But yeah, that's where we're at. After one episode of Severance, we'll see where it goes from here next week in episode 2 of Severance. And remember, it takes the saints 8 hours to bless a child. So make sure you get your sleep, because it's very important that you are awake and fresh to make money for somebody else when you go to work the next day.
Who are you?
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.